looking at Hannah Rose and you're saying, where have I seen her before? And
Oh no.
you know,
Or you're probably not, because it was so brief.
It was so brief, but Hannah was a contestant on last season of Survivor, and yay. It's entertainment, and I'll let you tell your own story, but it has to do with the virtues of quitting. And you can briefly describe what happened to you on that show and what the aftermath was like.
Yeah.
But then I'd like you to talk about what you purposefully wrote about the virtues of quitting in your Johns Hopkins piece. So it's a tall order. Take it away, Hannah.
No, I'll just try to, my issue is that I could talk about this for hours, so I will try to make all of this as succinct as possible. Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Hannah. So during COVID, I needed a show to just like binge watch, and I found Survivor because they put 2 seasons on Netflix. I'd never watched it. I was like, oh, that show is still on. Turns out it is such an amazing show. It is so well done. It's like psychologically and physically, it's just so great. And basically you're on an island and surviving and also competing with each other and making alliances and voting each other out. And it's just so complex. And I was like, as a fan, I was just like, this is amazing. As someone who might suffer from delusions of grandeur, I was like, oh, I could do that. I could do that, which is something I think all of the time about all of the things. I'm just like, oh, I could do that. And some may call it impulsive. I will call it spontaneous. Yeah. I walked upstairs to my little home office and took a 30-second video saying, hi, I'm Hannah, and I think I should be on Survivor, and here's why, etc. And I sent it into CBS.com. And I never expected to hear back. It's ludicrous to think I put zero effort. I was just like, there's no way. Long story short, a couple months later, I'm teaching this class, and I get it. And I told them all that I applied to Survivor, and they thought I was this ridiculous millennial, because millennials are lame now to Gen Z. And I get this email during class from Survivor casting, and I was like, I have to go. And we ended class like when it was supposed to end. And they basically said, send a 3-minute video in if you're still interested. And so I got in my car. I had Invisalign in. Took a 3-minute video and was just like, this is why I think I should be on Survivor. Haha. Turns out I go through casting for the next 7 months. I'm flown out to LA to interview with the host. It's so surreal. And I just kept saying, this is out of my control. I'm just going to keep showing up and being myself. Like, cool. And I get cast on season 45 of Survivor. I prepare for that whole 7 months. I did a lot of endurance stuff and working out. I read all the books by David Goggins, who is very much like push through the pain and run 100 miles. I was just like so in it for almost a year. And I fly out to Fiji. It's so emotional, so surreal. We go to Fiji for a month with no contact with the outside world. Meanwhile, I'm running a business, and I have to find a way to make sure everything is running smoothly while I'm off the grid for a month. Yeah. It's a whole separate level of stress, and it really helped me to delegate and to offload responsibilities and to hire and outsource. And the person who does my billing and insurance administrative stuff is like my best friend. I'm like he has saved the practice because I don't have to do everything anymore. So that's helpful.
So I want to interrupt you because if anybody saw the show and the first episode, and it's raining, and it's not raining, it's monsoon rain, and
I don't even think they showed the monsoon.
Well, but it's Fiji. You kind of know that it's wet, it's uncomfortable. You described your toenails were not hanging on for dear life, and I said to my wife, I said, now we all know the camp that you were a camper at, and
I used that in my application. I was
and I'm like, that wasn't really roughing it. Roughing it was not having access to the electrical outlet to plug in your hair dryer.
Roughing it was like, you can't go to archery today because it's raining.
Right. So it had to be, this was nothing like I imagined, right?
Yeah. So no, I have seen, there are 45 seasons. It's been on for 23 years. I've watched almost all of this season. So I've seen the good and the bad. I knew it was very survivalist. You're in a tribe, you're with 6 people. And what I thought was, someone will know how to build a fire. Someone will know how to build a shelter. Right. I'm not going to learn those things. Someone else will know. Turns out I was on the history-making, statistically worst tribe in Survivor history. We are a
Absolutely.
meme. If you look up Survivor Lulu tribe, we are
Yeah.
just a meme.
Yeah.
No one knew how to do it. All of us had the same thought, which was someone else will know. And so we also were the first tribe in history to not win flint, which helps you make fire, or a
Right.
machete, which helps you make shelter. So we had
Right.
no fire, we had no shelter. It monsooned, and I had kind of this like really strong visceral, like almost like a trauma response, where like my body was just shutting down. And so I was there for 3 days. On the third day we had an immunity challenge, which is like this really intense physical competition, and
Yeah.
I was waiting to feel competitive and adrenaline, and I was the only one on the whole season that was just like, I feel nothing. This is awful. Like, I'm going into straight survival mode. And so for me it wasn't really a question. I mean, I knew, just like spoiler alert if you haven't seen this episode, I knew who was getting voted out because we went to tribal council where someone
Yeah.
gets voted out. I knew who was getting voted out, and I knew how badly they wanted to be there. And I knew that the only reason that I would have stayed would be to save face on national television. And I was
Right.
like, you know what? If I'm anything, I'm authentic. And so I'm just, screw this. They also,
But
there was
but
so much more that happens that wasn't seen.
yeah, but you were going through an autonomic brain overload. I mean,
Right.
you
And I didn't know why
autonomic
no
is
one else was. No
that's
one else was.
I mean, your heart rate is racing, your
Yeah,
adrenaline is on
it was
fire.
bad.
It's fight or flight. It's the
Yeah,
fight or
but
flight mechanism, right?
I think what's tough is this notion of like, but you should be grateful, right? And I talk about this often in terms of like gratitude shaming, where it's like, oh, I'm going through all of these things, but I should be grateful that I got cast, or I should be, oh, my job is awful, but I should be grateful I have a job. And we
Yeah.
use gratitude in this backhanded way that's actually shaming. And so I caught myself doing that. In my own internal monologue, I was like, I should be grateful. Like, I'm one of 18 people that got cast on a show. And I was grateful and also was having a horrible experience. I could
Right.
tell that my body was like, so I didn't sleep. That was kind of the kicker, is I did
Oh,
not sleep the entire time because we didn't have shelter and people were snoring and I'm a light sleeper. All these
yeah.
reasons I should not have gone, but I regret nothing. Once I quit, and it was a quit, I basically threatened my tribe to vote me out because they wouldn't. And then I got to hang out in Fiji for a month. And every 2 days, someone else got voted out, and we all hung out at this resort with food. And it was the time of my life. It was camp. It was amazing. And I made the best friends, and I had the
Yeah.
best time. And everyone on the cast was super supportive and loving.
So I'm not gonna. I don't want to get into all the gratitude shaming. I mean, it's bullshit, and I'm sorry,
It's
but
real. I mean, if
I know.
just for anyone that's listening, if someone comes to you with something painful and you say, "But at least da 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 da," that is not empathy.
No,
That's
it's
not
not.
helpful.
It's
And
not.
Brene Brown has a great short animated video called Empathy versus Sympathy, and it breaks down why you should not try to silver line someone's experience. And we do that by saying, "But you should be grateful," and that's not helpful. So
You let them
that's what I
talk.
think.
You let them own it. You don't put your smell all over it about gratitude and so forth. But I want to get to the virtues of quitting, because I looked at what you
Yeah.
went through and I said, well, good on her. She owns it. She knows that. I mean, okay. I know what it's like to not go with sleep for 3 days. My wife was critically ill in hospital many years ago. I did not sleep.
Mm,
I was exhibiting borderline psychosis,
mm, mm.
and my mother-in-law and I were at each other's throats because she didn't realize that I was freaked out, scared beyond my wits, and not sleeping and not eating. And I can only imagine, Hannah, what you were going through. I had great empathy for you. It's like, oh my God, I I, I can relate to what she is describing here.
Yeah. And it's really anxiety producing when a camera's in your face 24/7. And like, I'm just
Yeah.
not made for that. And I didn't know until I knew? And so I don't regret it. I think what was hard for me, I had no regrets. And I maintain that I'm so glad I left when I did. I think I would have
Mm,
had long term been really messed up by all of it. I just realized like I knew my buddy Brandon, I knew him for 3 days and I could not write his name down because like to vote him out because I
yeah.
loved him so much. Same with
Yeah.
Emily. And so like, I'm just not made for it. I didn't know until I knew. What was tough for me was the internet backlash. And I'm
Yeah.
not on social media anyway. Like, except LinkedIn, which doesn't count to me.
Yeah.
And it was very much like I was getting 1-star Google reviews on Rose Wellness saying I would never take advice from a spoiled quitter. And there was this shame piece with quitting that was like, you don't know
Right.
how to do hard. And they named the episode "We Could Do Hard Things" because I kept saying that to myself. I was like,
Yeah.
we could do hard things. And I can do hard things. That was not something I wanted to do. So I left. But people got very angry that I took someone else's spot and all this stuff. And
okay, you know what, Hannah? I
cool.
explained in pre-interview. I used to be in TV production. That's on them. The talent development picked you, and maybe in the future they got to do a better job of delving into where this person's breaking points are, so that
Yeah.
they're
Listen, I
not
think it was
disappointed.
TV nonetheless. It was good TV nonetheless. I have this like culty Twitter following. I'm not on Twitter, but they exist. And they're they're amazing. They're all these Gen Z, like 20-something-year-olds who are like, yes, Hannah, like healthy boundaries. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, well,
I feel seen.
you're finding the people that it really matters, and I think that's great. So you wrote this piece, which just got posted on Johns Hopkins, and I was wondering if you could just describe where you ended up, where you netted out.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hopkins actually reached out to me to write a piece about that. I did not.
Wow.
I wasn't like, I'm going to write about my experience on Survivor. They reached out to me, and I went to Hopkins for grad school, and I was like, oh my God, I'd be honored. Absolutely. And they're like, can you just write something about like why you decided to do it? You did, because they had interviewed me prior to the show, or right after the episode came out. A different like part of Hopkins had interviewed me, and it was like, wow, it seems like the public backlash is really toxic. Like, how do you navigate that? And so it was just an interview piece that was published. So then Johns Hopkins Magazine reached out and said like, hey, we'd love for you to expand on this and just write something in your own words. So I was like, sure. And I talked about how I don't have this I don't have this complex with quitting something as giving up. And like I said in the article, when I decided to quit lacrosse because I wanted to pursue musical theater, my parents weren't like, no, you have to do lacrosse forever because you committed. They were like, cool, follow your dreams. Great. When I got sober at 20 years old, I wasn't thinking like I'm quitting drinking because I'm weak. It was like, that was the hardest thing I've ever done and took a lot of strength. And so for me, quitting a job, leaving a relationship, quitting a TV show that is very traumatizing to me. And again, the TV show is great. Production is phenomenal. It's not toxic. I just was not made for that. There was no like, I'm weak, I'm not good enough. It was like, I'm going to check in with my body. Oh, my body is on the fritz, and I need to listen to the cues that it's given me. That's trauma informed. That's mindfulness. That's somatic awareness. Like all the stuff that I've learned in my own therapy, not even being a therapist, that goes out the window. It's my own work. And so for me, yeah, the art of quitting, right? Like, I think there's this really horrible negative connotation with quitting. And for me, it's like, if something doesn't serve me and I have the strength and capacity to walk away, how valuable, how amazing. I get to prioritize my quality of life and my peace over what I think other people expect of me. And that's what I said when I quit Survivor. I said, millions of people are going to hate me, but I have to listen to my gut. And that's what I did. And I'm so proud of myself for that.
Well, I was proud of you too, and I've known you a very long time, and I'm glad you owned it. I'm glad you owned your agency to quit if you felt that's what you needed to do.